else for something else. I was helping somebody on. Good morning, Betty. Good morning, everybody. Right? Well, I don't know whether Mike is here, but still, yep. Okay, thank you, Betty. Good morning, all. All right. Welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. It's Friday, June 27th. So we're talking about things that are happening, things that impact the local area here in Niagara Falls. What's been happening, Dave?
Well, I just got a message from Gary, and actually, I had messages from Gary that I didn't spot right off the bat, but
it happens.
He's shown me Niagara Falls cones, even one from Toronto, that are being used on private property. And so he just noticed that a bunch of Niagara Falls cones are on.
You mean public? Cones that are normally used on the road. People have stolen them to use for private property.
Well, they're used on private property in a parking lot, I think, and close to Huron and.
Yeah, I had seen some in a parking lot, probably the same parking lot, a while back. I'm not seeing any Toronto ones, but I didn't stop and look at them. I was just driving by. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Gary says they're about $45 each. I mean, they're plastic. Talk about ripoff.
Yeah,
there you go.
But I get it that they do cost. They do cost. I didn't know they were $45 each, but it doesn't surprise me. Yeah
Jesus,
give them back. Give them back to the city. They're not yours.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they
You can buy them.
Yes, you can. So, did they borrow them from the city, or I hope the city retrieves them?
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
I think though the city's a bit lackadaisical about removing them. A couple of days ago, the entrance, the Whirlpool Road entrance from Stanley Avenue reopened, and there's still a few cones around there, guys. Not many. You had about 40 cones, 50 cones, but there's some now on the other sides of the roads that you forgot to take.
Things are bad when even the thieves are stealing road cones. I could just see this black market in orange cones.
Yeah, I get it. Some drunken bum steals the road cones to stick it on their head to say, "Hey, aren't I an idiot?"
I take exception to that.
You mean you've done that?
Yes.
I haven't.
I think I have. I never stole one or anything like that.
No, but you picked it up, put it on your head.
Yeah.
And said, hey, look at me.
Yeah, I think once when we were I was at some kind of gathering or party or something, whatever, and there's a mob of people. I picked one up and used it as a megaphone just to get people's attention because some distant memory in my mind. I didn't steal it, just used it as a megaphone for a while.
Yeah, you kind of just held it up and shouted at the crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, got you. All right. Okay. So Niagara Health is reporting a $26 million deficit. They're saying they've got a serious financial strain across the hospital system. According to the Niagara Health, the shortfall is driven by a mix of pressures: inflation, higher wages tied to new labor agreements, and a escalating cost of essential medications. Not to also mention, of course, the big capital project like Niagara South Hospital. What a rotten name. Can we call it something else?
$26 million has nothing to do with the new hospital. It is the operating costs of the healthcare systems that already exist. So the $26 million isn't a factor into that. That's the sort of the building projects.
They're saying though that the deficit poses challenges to maintaining services while continue capital projects like the hospital. which is usually a dig at the building works that are going on.
Well, this is money, 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 money.
Yeah.
It is.
And we're going to be talking a bit about money today as well. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, what else is there? We are a Western nation addicted to debt, like all the other Western nations. We find the Europeans and the Japanese, the Americans, of course, are hugely.
Well, actually, I think we're actually fairly well run. You know, the city, the region, fairly well run compared to the debt that I've seen with UK councils.
Well, let's put it this way: we're badly run, but not as bad as the other ones.
UK councils are probably well run if they're probably 10 times our debt.
Well, this is this particular debt that we have here, a 26 million shortfall. I mean, it's sad enough, but if you look at the other ones, the deficits of 9.5 million for 23-24, 5.7 million for 22-23. Suddenly, it's like 22-23 doubled for 23-24 for 9.5, and then that now has 2.5 times, more than 2.5 times the deficit that we hit, the shortfall we hit for last year. What's going on? Our healthcare system is being overly strained.
Yeah,
a lot of that we've talked about before, where the idiotic governments have allowed so many people in without expanding the healthcare system. If you're going to let 1 million people in, you have to expand your healthcare to take care of 1 million people. And if you don't do that, you're going to have to pay a lot of overtime. You're going to have to. Your system is very strained.
But again, the part of the problem here is that we've got more people coming here, but we've not got a greater tax. We don't seem to be building our tax base, building the tax income. That's what I meant to say. Tax income, not tax.
Yeah. Whatever is but we find ourselves as shortfalls everywhere.
Yeah.
We need more and more and more. People are handing out. We find the region and asking for more money.
Yeah.
The city asking for more money.
Yeah, but you see, what they're basically saying is they've got problem maintaining services. They've got challenges because of the capital projects, and now on top of it, they've still got to recruit more people.
The $26 million deficit is equivalent to 3.2% of the hospital system's $801 million operating budget. And this is what they say: inflation, higher labor costs, and the rising price of medications and supplies are having a significant impact. If we get into a tariff war, this is going to be even worse. Well, we're not going to be able to avoid tariffs because Trump loves them, so we're going to not be able. But are we going to be able to avoid tariffs with China? Can we do that? Where a lot of this stuff comes from? Are we going to be able to avoid tariffs with Europe?
We've been talking about China. We've been talking about Chinese produced goods for at least 10 years. And we need to, we've been talking about the need to get out of China for at least 10 years.
Well, right now we have to. Sadly, we're working on trying to make ourselves more independent from the United States.
Yeah,
and we're going to face tariffs from the U.S. Well, they're going to anyway. If the government's smart, they won't put tariffs on anything that is health related, hopefully, and whether it comes from China, the U.S., or the EU, or wherever else. But that whole thing reverberates throughout all the markets. But it's just basically, like you say, with more than 80% of our budget, it says here, directed to frontline care through staffing and medical and surgical supplies. The vast majority of our spending supports direct patient care. Now, somebody who's had like, I don't know, I've had a handful of operations. I've had to be hospitalized a couple times, and going into medical. I've never had any real problems except in recent years about how long it takes. How long does it take?
Yeah.
To get service, and then you have to be very careful because the quality of service is pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, and
but again, a lot of that is actually about where much of the money comes from.
Yeah. Well, it says here, a key contributor to the increasing costs is facing Niagara Health says it's a growing number of alternate level care patients, those who no longer need hospital care but can't be discharged due to lack of community supports.
Yeah.
So there are patients there that have to stay there because there's no place for them to go.
Yeah.
So if you imagine let's say an unhoused person, a homeless person has to go to the hospital, but can't be released into the general public, but has to go home or somewhere home, and there's no place to put them, then they are actually then in the hospital system.
A burden on the healthcare system. Yeah. While we're talking budgets, let's move on to another budget. Police Chief Bill Fordy is basically saying the budget cap on the police amounts to defunding the police.
Well, this article is more than just about the police budget. It's about budgets, all the whole regional budget. Now, at first, the NPR, the Niagara.
Yeah, but it's focused, of course. The headline's focused, of course, on that defunding the police concept.
Yeah, that's misleading because no one wants to defund the police. They don't want to defund the police. They only want to give them X amount of money. They are tasked with trying to bring their budgets in line with the proposal that region only has a 3.5% increase this year.
Yeah,
the regions has had huge increases, 9% and 7% in the last couple of years, which is it's really hard on the average taxpayer. Bob Gale has said, look, let's keep it down to 3.5% because this is quite a burden on the average person in Niagara Falls. It's just a growing burden. And the police have
then. I appreciate what Bob Gale has done, because actually he's focused the attention of people like Bill Fordy on living within budgetary constraints. Keep that car another year or two. Things like that.
Now the cops have said that, well, we can't do that. If you want frontline service, you're going to have to pay up. And a police officer is a very expensive person to employ. And the equipment they use, the kind of vehicles they use, are extremely expensive. I don't know why they have such expensive vehicles. I don't think they need.
Well, and even if they have expensive vehicles, if they keep them, I don't know how long they keep their vehicles, but if they keep them for 3 years, why can't they keep them for 5 years?
Well, they're pretty well gone. They're running all the time, 24 hours basically, those cars. So if they could do that, they're going to have to swap out engines and things like that.
That's something you'd have to do anyway.
Well, that's expensive. So where do you get? Do you? I
don't know.
I don't know how much money they get from them after they sell them, but the police board members approved a timeline for developing a 2026 budget, scheduling the NPR to meet with Niagara Regional Budget Review. But the police says that that's actually amounts to defunding, I suppose, because they cannot meet the current service requirements with a budget of only 3.5%. Yeah. They've asked for something like 13.5%, which is like more than four times what around 4 times.
That's only an increase of 13%. Whereas what they region is saying we should be living with an increase of 3.5%. So the increase, it's not about the budget overall.
He
I think
says
we have to
by
be clear about that.
by aligning with those budget requirements of 3.5%, they would lose frontline service. It says here, meaning that target would cut roughly 50 frontline officers from the NRP ranks, said a report presented. So basically, what they're just saying, if you want police services at the level that you have them now, you're going to have to give a lot more than 3.5%. If you have 3.5%, we're going to have to cut frontline officers. And frontline officers, of course, are for the public are the most important. Yeah. You want their presence. Now, I think a big part of the problem is the police are continually called to non-emergency situations where you have homeless people, particularly unhoused people and addicted people. So they're the ones that are called to overdoses and things like that, and they investigate. That takes up a lot of their time. So having the experiences I've seen where they may take hours to extract a person from a hotel room who's causing a lot of problems, and then when they do take a person that's causing problems, they don't take them to jail because that's costly. So they just try to take them somewhere else, anywhere. So there are not the facilities that will help the police deal with the large amounts of homeless people that sucks up a lot of their time doing that kind of thing. And what you want the police to be is interactive with the public in the most positive ways, in most efficient ways. But I think they're picking up a lot of overdose people and addicted people, unhoused people that get rowdy or get in the way of, cause disturbances and that kind of thing. I don't know what other facilities you could use in a case like this, but they're pretty much saying if you want the level of services you have now, that the budget will have to increase. Well, the message is very, very clear in this article because it goes on later to say 3.5 increase is unrealistic. To put, including Laura Ip, who is probably one of the more famous.
She's a big critic, of course, of the police.
But she also says that I think she's on the police board here.
I know she is. Yeah, absolutely. She's on the police board.
And her complaint here is by putting an arbitrary figure of 3.5% is not doing budgets like budgets should be done. Budgets should be done by the council and by the staff of trying to look at what the needs are of the city and applying funds here, there, and wherever they need.
Yeah.
And try to find if they determine they need X amount of dollars, then they have to distribute it where they feel it, and then they're going to have to say, well, we can't do the 3.5. So
I get it. Can I pause you there for a moment? Okay. One very important quick announcement Mike has just made. It's the last day of school today, which also means that it's Canada Day weekend, by the way. I thought so many schools actually that were told, I was told yesterday there was the last day of school, so maybe it's different for different schools. Okay, so it's Canada Day weekend, and we I think we should be saying we're not going to have a Talking Niagara on Monday and Tuesday next week. We'll come back on Wednesday after Canada Day. Okay.
Yeah, watch out for the kids, everyone. Watch out for the kids. Like,
please.
Everybody's gonna get ready to go for the Canada Day celebrations and getting ready for their holidays or long weekends and everything. Watch out for the little tykes. They're gonna be all excited.
And
they're gonna be all excited. They're gonna be running around, and the kids they lose concentration and they might run out on the road. Keep a big eye out on those for the wee ones.
And to those kids, pay attention to the roads, kids.
Yeah, you can tell them all day long, but they're still kids. It's up to us to watch out for them.
I know. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. All right. Welcoming Streets, a business approach to homeless. It's a regionally funded project initiative launched in April of this year to reduce friction and foster better relationships between vulnerable populations, particularly unhoused individuals and downtown businesses in St. Catharines. Right. The Heart is a program to deploy specially trained outreach workers as community liaisons. Thoughts? We were talking budget a minute ago. This is one of those budget impacting things.
Well, if this works, this is good because this will, what we just talked about, police are always called to these sort of irritating, annoying calls.
That's why I put it in here at this point. Yeah.
So they are the continuous long annoying calls that the police have to address, where they're consumed a great amount of time. Their skills as officers are not required.
Yeah,
basically, their skills of officers, they have a firearm, they have bulletproof vests and stuff. They're ready for things that could really go out of hand.
Yeah,
and I guess and among the homeless, that rarely happens when somebody gets really out of hand in a violent way. So they end up using a lot of their time to talk people down, trying to get them moving away from a storefront or something like that. This initiative is the Welcoming Streets Initiative, the WTI. Is unanimously endorsed by the St. Catharines City Councilors on November, and is funded it with $128,000 from the Niagara region to foster connections. Now, what are they going to do? So what they do is they're the store owners and stuff who get very frustrated with sort of unruly or just an amount of unhoused people walking around and hanging around downtown. That doesn't bother me. I was in St. Catharines a couple of weeks ago, and there was a handful of these people in front of the place I was going into before it was opened. So they don't bug me at all, except they try to sponge some bucks off me.
Yeah. It's mainly, most of the time, I think the homeless in St. Catharines are not problematic. It's, as a business owner in a building that has been invaded by homeless and had bathrooms and things like that destroyed, that's been where some of the problems have occurred. Some businesses have had to pay extra for security, especially when their buildings are open later at night than the normal buildings are. So they have security because the doors have to be open. It's when it becomes later than 4 o'clock that you got a problem.
Well, it's also libraries.
That's one.
Liquor stores.
Yep.
It just annoys me to no end that we have to have security people in our library. It drives me mad that we have to have security in our liquor stores. I don't know what kind of impression I give, but when I walk into a liquor store, they take one look at me and keep an eye on me.
I don't know why they would do that.
Well, because I got a winter coat on in the summertime, and with lots of pockets on the inside.
Yeah, but I know that you're going to go steal a load of books, but you're going to take them all back again.
Well, I'm talking about when I go in the liquor store.
Well, from the articles you've been giving us the last few weeks, I didn't think you went to the liquor store.
I go in disguise. There he is again. Well, no, I don't hit the liquor stores too often, but actually, I was in there a couple of days ago because I was had to go to a party, I think I bought 1 can of Mike's lemonade in the end. Well, actually, I was in the liquor store and I left my stuff there. I had 2 things I was going to buy, but the lineup was like unbelievable. It was halfway back to the coolers, and there was one teller, and that one teller kept buzzing for help, and no help came. And the people who were putting alcohol on the shelves didn't go and help. And I just thought, I waited there for 5 minutes and the line didn't move. So I just dropped my stuff and left and went to the corner store and bought stuff in 5 minutes.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I'm, less inclined to go to the LCBO. Anyway.
Yeah, I've been in long lines there a few times now, particularly the one, and it's just why am I standing here in line? I could go.
Right,
well,
so
the beer stores across the street's better, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, going back, welcoming streets acknowledges that downtowns work best when they're safe, inclusive and compassionate for everybody who lives, works, and simply passes through. It reflects a shift from reactive policing towards protective engagement and de-escalation. Right. So I think that's a good thing. And
well, if this cost $128,000, we could take it off the police budget.
Actually, at $128,000, that's actually that's a pretty slim budget item.
Yeah, and I don't know if the people are being paid or how many of these people
I suspect they must be volunteers, many of them.
I would think that some would be at least.
Or paid by other organizations.
$128,000 just wouldn't cover a whole lot.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is to put people on the streets that can talk down people, do what the police do without having to come with a police car and use up police time, so they can actually talk down these people where normally the business owner might phone the police to get these people away from their door or that kind of thing. I remember I said, like, when Polish people don't bug me, well, because I'm a man. I can walk down the street, they try to sponge some money off me, I'm not intimidated. But you get some ladies, particularly older ladies, and they go down there and they're being hassled by,
That's for sure. We get older ladies all the time that are complaining about the fact that the rise in homelessness in the center of St. Catharines. Right?
Yeah, it's intimidating for them.
It is.
Like when I was there a couple of weeks ago, the last guy that tried to sponge money off me was a big lad. He was he was like about 6'3" and a big lad, and he was trying to sponge coin off me. Well, imagine if an old lady come up to an old lady and started, say, "Hey, how about give me some money?"
It could be intimidating. But Dave,
it's scary for an old person like that.
Yeah, but Dave, if you're ever in town again in St. Catharines again, just pop into 71 King, Suite 107. We'll happily say hi. Okay.
Yeah, I might need to use the washroom.
Yeah, you're always welcome. At least one good thing about our washrooms now in our office is the washrooms are internal to the office. So we don't get any street invaders invading the office because you actually have to know the code to get into the office.
And what is it with that? There are a certain amount of people that just like to destroy washrooms. I don't get that.
I don't get it either.
We used to get it on the work site. Every once in a while, you get a disgruntled worker and he'd plug up all the toilets. And like, what good is that, man? You're not doing anything against the company. The company has to spend money to fix it and all that. But in the meantime, you've got a raft of
disgruntled
construction workers that don't have a washroom.
Who can't get their work done, who are now having to find alternative toileting facilities because of the mess you've just made. I don't get it.
I don't get it.
Okay. Occasionally a toilet breaks. You drop something on a toilet or something. Accidents happen, right? I get it.
Well, once in a while, yeah. In any case,
Well, particularly in construction sites,
I suppose, but it's very rare.
Yeah, I know.
In any case, there, there, who could care less if a homeless or a person wanted to use the washroom, as long as they, behave themselves correctly. My father, when he had his shop down in downtown Toronto on Jarvis Street, he used to get after the bums that hung around there. Told them not to urinate on the street. If they need to go use the washroom, use mine right here, because it was a shop. So come in and behave yourself and use this washroom, and don't pee on the street, because they were they were homeless, and in that case they were alcoholics and that.
Yeah.
So there's the other aspect of it. So I don't know, but whatever happens, these people here with the Welcoming Streets initiative, they're trained in dealing with people who are unhoused, and they can talk them out of putting impositions into the city's businesses. Now that's a big deal. The city businesses have found that their trade has gone down when the more homeless people are hanging out on the street.
Yeah,
they have a more difficult time than anyone, really, because they're the ones that are on the front line. The homeless folk don't go to the malls, do they?
Yeah.
No, they walk up and down the main streets, and that, of course, is infringing on their business, which is a sad thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and if you go back to the 70s, 80s, I think it was the 80s in Brazil, the homeless situation was getting so bad that the store owners had to hire thugs to get rid of them, because the city and the governments wouldn't do anything about it. So the businesses would hire thugs to beat them up and chase them off the streets. We don't want anything like that to happen, do we? Here.
Yeah.
So to finding ways to de-escalate this sort of situation is a good thing. We have this growing unhoused problem. We have this growing addicted problem. Gary described what was happening to me in Peterborough, which is terrible. And we found that the same problem was in Belleville. As a matter of fact, it was a state of emergency. They just did not have anywhere to go. They're using this program in Belleville too. So it's whether it will work or not, I hope it does.
Well, I'm presuming that some of the people who are helping on the program are partially funded, at least by other organizations.
Possibly, but my biggest concern here is, will it work?
Yeah.
And our growing homeless problem and vagabond problem, how do we deal with it? It's just all roads lead back to this growing population of ours, of people that don't have much to do and are homeless and just need places to hang out. And I don't know how that's going to be solved. And to de-escalate, that sounds like it's going to work for a while, but after a while, will those people then begin to ignore these sort of intermediaries from the Welcoming Streets initiative and try to get them, just then start to ignore them?
Well, I suspect what you'll end up with here will also be Welcoming Streets will be a great news for the police. And what will tend to happen is, if the police get called, they'll then be calling Welcoming Streets.
Yeah, this whole thing is to try to remove what happens. Of course, the store owners or somebody else will phone 911 or something, and along comes the paramedics, along comes the fire department, and along comes the police.
Yeah. And of course, the paramedics or the police may well be required if a person needs medical assistance. But hopefully, if they call and alert the welcoming, this group, that'll help. That'll help alleviate the pressure on the police.
Yeah.
I hope.
So I'm not exactly the snappiest dresser at times. So this will avoid me being accosted by the police.
Okay, so moving on. Why Palestinians are being killed trying to access food in Gaza?
This is a terrible story. It's a terrible story that's getting worse all the time. The whole idea of having the let me get up the article before I start rambling here. Yeah, so basically they have this the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It's partly run by a private business concern. Like, these are privately run contractors from the United States and the Israeli government. What has happened, of course, we know that almost all the infrastructure, there are no functioning police in Gaza anymore. They had their own police force. They had their own fire department. They had all the things that communities usually have. All that's all destroyed now. So there's no law and order there. So what they've done is they said, okay, we're not going to bring in trucks. Well, what happened was they stopped bringing in trucks for 3 weeks, made just about everybody starve to death. And then when they did start bringing in the trucks, they were looted. And of course, you're going to be getting looted because you're desperate. There's the truck. If I don't jump on that truck and peel something off, I'm not going to get anything. That's the mentality.
Yeah, and there's another angle, of course. You've got gangs being part of this looting who are ripping off both Palestinians, and of course those bringing the aid in.
Well, these places, there's two in the south and one in the north. These Gaza Humanitarian places, foundation places, they have been set up to regulate the flow of food and supplies to people. However, the people are coming there and they're being forced to go through combat zones, and the IDF is trigger happy. They've killed nearly 600 people. This is just in a matter of a short time. They've killed over 600 people, around 600 people, and wounded dozens of them. There's a picture here of one of the Gaza hospitals, one of the few that's still open, with the floors just drenched in streaked in blood. Yeah. And these people lying on the floor because they're waiting to get some kind of treatment as best they can, and the other ones are dead. And a lot of children are getting shot. Now, you tell me, when the IDF sprays they say, okay, they're shooting warning shots. They're shooting warning shots. They're killing people.
Well, the other thing, of course, that has been said is that these people are coming too close to the soldiers.
Well, look, they're supposed to have these corridors open, and they say this road is open, and then they get the road open. And once the IDF starts getting nervous, they start shooting, and they start shooting at everybody, it seems. They're not controlled. And, a whole lot more Palestinians just got killed after Hamas killed 7 soldiers. So Hamas killed 7 soldiers in an armored vehicle just a few days ago. Well, the IDF takes revenge. They're not taking revenge on Hamas, are they? Hamas is in the tunnel somewhere.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's been said about here is Rachel Cummings, humanitarian director for Save the Children, which is a UK-based charity. Well, it's fairly well known worldwide, right? So the further bloodshed as parents tried to scavenge for their food as a result of dangerous aid mechanism that is designed to fail, pointing at a range of causes, including a lack of trust amongst locals. If people know that there's a predictable nature around distribution, that they can know today is not my day, but tomorrow will be my day, they can react calmly, and again, that can facilitate safe and dignified distribution. And she's obviously, organizations like Save the Children have helped with aid stations around the world.
Well, the whole place is lawless. Let's put it that way. And of course, there's a criminal element everywhere in the world. So what's happening is even when you get your aid package and walk away, you are risking being robbed. And you might not be being robbed by a gang of black marketeers. You might be robbed by someone else who is very desperate, who's taking your food for their family.
Yeah,
it's a complete lawless situation there. So the Gaza police forces, of course, have all completely dissolved. The Gaza fire departments and all the other organizations that might have been able to help with organizing these things or keeping order are all gone. The only thing is left is Hamas under in tunnels somewhere, and they're not. They seem to be well supplied, or at least as well as the IDF's assertions.
Despite, for example, the Gaza Health, who were at one point in this situation the main suppliers of the numbers of dead, and despite that, Gaza Health were actually being accused of being part of Hamas. Was still accused of being part of Hamas. So
what is
Gaza Health?
Oh well, they have to be. It's like the healthcare, like Nazi health or whatever. The German,
but at least
during the war, they had to be part of the Nazi party, but they still functioned as a fire department or a police force. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. But at least they were giving reliable statistics at one point, whereas that has all stopped now.
Well, yeah, that's why we know that there's at least 57,000 people killed. It could be double that. People who are walking around in that area, like the NGOs, the Doctors Without Borders, or they Save the Children. People walk around the streets, they can smell the rotting corpses of people in the rubble. So it is a crime, an incredible crime that the world has turned their back on, particularly the West. The West has the means to stop this. The United States has the means to stop this. Trump said he was going to stop the war in Ukraine in one day. He also said that he would solve the Gaza thing immediately. He went there and he says, "Oh, I'm going to build a huge resort here." Then walked away and hasn't said another thing about it. And yet, day after day after day, they keep supplying the IDF with weapons to kill people in Gaza. He spends gigantic amounts of money dropping huge bombs in Iran, but only spends $30 million on aid for Gaza, and that really isn't being distributed well. The United States and the Western Europe have the facilities to super organize something and get things done very well, but they refuse not to. They put in a company, basically, a U.S. company into Gaza to distribute food, and they're trying. I'm sure there's many people who are working with it are trying. They're getting aid out there, but when people try coming for aid, they're getting gunned down.
And the other thing is, there's not actually there's not exactly a steady stream of trucks crossing the border providing aid.
Well, when they do come across the border, they're looted.
Yeah.
Because there's no security. So the IDF is not providing the security at all. They just let them go in there and watch them get looted and say,
by the way,
look at that. They're getting looted by criminals. Well, most of the time they're getting looted by people who see the truck and say, if I don't get it now, I might not get it. Yeah. So I'm going to get it now. It's a complete disorder there.
Oh, yeah. And Save the Children, by the way, is helping by providing clean drinking water for around about 20,000 people each day in Gaza. It doesn't sound very, very much, but 20,000 at least are getting clean water.
Civilians and health officials in Gaza have largely blamed the deaths on Israeli military. Multiple people, like, of course, there are going to be there are going to be people who are stealing this food, people who are desperate, trying to steal it. There's going to be a criminal element. There always is. There always is a black marketeer.
Oh, yeah.
Cheering. This happens every time in a war zone. The criminal-minded take advantage of the lawless situation. So they will steal it and then sell it on the black market as best they can, and which just exacerbates things. We don't know how much Hamas steals, but the average person walking down, trying to go down the road, trying to get to these places, and they're desperate, and they walk off the path and they're being shot.
Yeah.
And now that 7 Israeli soldiers being killed a couple of days ago, 7 Israeli soldiers that need not have died. If they could have come up, if they had a ceasefire. And in any case, the problem here is it is a disorganized fracas. And this separate organization, I wonder how much money they're making. It's a company, I think, that's running as far as the U.S. part of it is. So they have 3 stations for food distribution for a population of over 2 million people, and they've got 1 in the north and 2 in the south.
Yeah.
So you're going to get mobs of people moving towards these areas, and of course you're going to have disorder. And the IDF is trigger happy anyway, so they say they're shooting warning signs. But I mean, look, a 12-day war killed 600 people in Iran with massive amounts of bombs dropped by the Israelis, and it killed 30 people in Israel with the missiles sent by Iran. So there's 630 people killed by massive ordnance. These are bullets, 1 by 1 bullets, killing the same amount of people, in a few weeks. What's going on? Why can't this be stopped?
Yeah.
Is everybody that afraid of Israel that they like? I know in the United States there's a large reaction to the Israeli lobby right now, using the United States to advance its own agenda in the Middle East. But really, can't you just stand up to them and say that's enough is enough? Stop it.
Anyway. Yeah. Okay. So moving on, the Liberals have managed to get their bill C5, One Canadian Economy Act, through Parliament with Conservative support. And this is to give Cabinet the ability to pick certain projects to speed up through the regulatory process, with an eye on projects that can deliver an economic boost to Canada, help strengthen the country's autonomy and resilience, and advance also the interests of Indigenous people, yet contributing to clean growth. And the Conservatives supported this bill.
This is very interesting. 2 things that occurred to me when I was reading this article. One, how this would never have happened under Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
I don't think Trudeau's government would have ever been able to do anything like this.
No,
they were mired down by ideology, and they would never have found a way through. Yeah. This is and the second thing that stands out to me is this is pretty much all conservative talking points.
Which is probably why they got a very little objection from the Conservatives, because I think the concept of picking certain projects to speed through the regulatory process, people are going to be saying, well, a lot of people will be saying, well, yeah, we need that. And there's something that Poilievre was campaigning on for a while, right? Keep an eye on projects that can deliver economic boost to Canada. Who's going to vote against that?
Well, first of all, this is an attempt to fast track essential projects that will build Canada's economy, energy, anything. It does not limit who is going to get fast tracked or who not. Obviously, the government is going to work with the provinces and say which things have to be fast tracked to get things going. Yeah. Everything has been bogged down by regulatory process. It was brought up in Parliament during Trudeau's time that it takes 15 years just to approve a site for a mine. 15 years. Yeah. So if you're an investor and you say you're investing in diamonds or gold or nickel or whatever, and there's a brand new chromium ore that you found in Northern Ontario, and you want to get at it, and it takes you 15 years to start up, you're going to say, well, maybe I'll go to the Congo where I could pay a bribe and get it done in 15 minutes, not 15 years.
Yeah.
So basically, the government was so frightened to try anything. Is it environmentally safe? Is this, is that, whatever? So this is all fast tracking things that is taking away the burden of bureaucracy and regulation that is overlaid just about everything in Canada, which stifles the growth in Canada. And this is what the Conservatives have said. So I believe them now, because if I already did believe them, but now I super believe them, because the Liberals are using exactly that same philosophy to speed things up. The idea is to remove the overburdens of regulatory oversight. Is just too much. It's like Form 51, Form 52, Form 51,005, Form 5018, and that kind of thing. Just get rid of it. Can we have a quick look at this? Can we see, is it going to be environmentally?
There has to be a certain level of bureaucracy. I think we don't disagree with that. Right, and we do.
Well, who's disagreeing with it? Nobody's disagreeing with it. It's just a level of bureaucracy.
Yeah. What we also want to do is make sure that when we develop things like mines, they are ecologically safe and safe. There's a good health and safety record for the mine, but we want to get them producing as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's like. I don't know. It's just overburdened. It reminds me of a guy who had one of these Jiffy Lube quick things. He told me that he had a very good idea of going around with a truck and picking up old oil filters, because they could crush the oil filters and extract oil that was in the filter, and then sell that used oil. And make a lot of money. So he talked to the government about it, and he had his plan and everything, and he just couldn't get them to make a decision. And then finally they said, and when he pushed it, they didn't know what to do. So they made it impossible for him to start. They said they'd have to put up $1 million. This is like 30 years ago. They have to put up $1 million, kind of a assurances, which made it impossible. So they could say that we didn't say no, and yeah, they didn't say no, but they made the conditions impossible for them to continue on because they were afraid
sometimes
they of things they didn't consider.
Yeah,
you know, but
sometimes with a business like that, you've just got to kind of get on and do it, and apologize to the government afterwards. Oh, I didn't know I had to get a license.
Yeah, well, you don't want to do that either. So here it is. Basically, this kind of sums it up. BC5, the one. It's called the One Canadian Economy Act, essentially gives cabinet the ability to pick certain projects to speed through the regulatory process. Notice regulatory process. With an eye on projects that can deliver an economic boost to Canada, help strengthen the country's autonomy and resilience, and advance the interests of Indigenous peoples and contributed to clean growth. I think Carney has sort of rejuvenized the Liberals and made them, brought them back to reality, away from ideology and back to reality. And he seems right now to be the guy for the job because he has previous business concerns. He can see the economy better. He's not, he's not talking about LGBTQ rights. He's not talking about making the Proud Boys a terrorist group, which seemed to be what the Liberals like to do when the economy was faltering. He's talking economy.
Yeah, it's getting moving. Yeah, he's talking about get it moving.
Yes. Now we do have some pushback from the Indigenous communities. And of course, why? Because they don't trust the government, and they shouldn't. The government, and not because the government is nasty or exploitative or anything. It's just they're incompetent. And so the Indigenous people and previous administrations have seen their incompetency and their inability to communicate with Indigenous communities. So I think probably the Indigenous community has a healthy skepticism, which is good. But I think we should be able to we should be able to negotiate with the Indigenous partners. Now the legislation passed fairly quickly because the Conservatives jumped on board. Their only concern was that it's not enough, which you would expect.
Yeah, but sometimes
it's a good start, they would say.
Yeah, but sometimes you've got to support a start, even if you believe the bill should go further.
But the NDP and the Bloc Québécois backed only a part of the bill that removes internal trade barriers. So, the internal trade barriers is another problem. And we really have to, like, for instance, an Ontario resident can't go to Quebec and work, but the other way around they can. When you've got big construction projects, Quebec tries not to hire people from other parts of Canada, but they will send their workers to Alberta during the oil fields expansions. So not send them, but they were welcome there. It's such an issue with Quebec that when they had the big ice storms there, and Ontario Hydro was ready to cross the border and help them with their ice storms, they went to the U.S. and got U.S. contractors instead of Canadian ones because they couldn't show that they needed other Canadian workers. So they had to make an issue of it by getting American ones instead of Canadian. That's how dumb this stuff is.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So just want to kind of, before we finish, okay. So a Jaws back. Great white was circling a lobster boat off of Cape Breton recently, and it tried to take a chunk out of the boat.
I put that there because the great white sharks come up more in the summertime than they do in the winter.
Yeah.
There's more and more of an occurrence of them. In this particular case, a guy in a lobster boat had a run-in with a rather large great white, and tried to take a bite out of the back of his boat, but he wasn't concerned because his boat was very robust and he didn't have to care. But he got a good look at the thing because it was right near the surface.
Yeah.
Now, I back in 1983, in August 1983, I had a cast on my arm after an operation, and I went swimming in PEI. But I couldn't go very far. I could only go as far as my neck, basically. I had to keep my hand out of the water, so I wasn't really swimming. I was just in the water.
Just
2 days
in the water, yeah.
A few days after I was there, they pulled a great white, a 17-foot, 2,200-pound great white shark right off where I was swimming in shallow water. It had come in close and got caught up in the nets that were set up close, not far from shore. And if I had been swimming, if I had actually gone out and swimmed a little farther, I might have been a tasty snack for that big great white. It was a big female. It got tangled up in the nets that were close to that spot. But but this damn thing had been cruising the shoreline right where I was swimming. It's a good thing I had a cast on because I would have gone fairly far out. Yeah. It was a fairly nice day at the sea, and I was very fond of swimming. So, yes, my broken wrist saved me from ending up being.
When I saw this, I'm thinking, okay, the return of Jaws, right?
Well, yeah, and bigger and more great whites are coming in. It's not unusual for great white sharks to come up here, particularly in the summertime. But it is unusual. There are more and more of them, and we actually had our first document an attack by a great white. I think it was last year or a couple of years ago, and in this particular case, it's around Inverness, which is off Cape Breton Island, and our family bought lobsters right on that dock there when we were holidaying there in the summertime.
Yeah. And yes, you're right. The great whites do come up in that area. In fact, they like to come up into the northern regions during the summer to cool off.
Actually, there's I think Farley Mowat documented a great white in Newfoundland. So they go as far as there. So the great whites will go wherever they want to go.
Yeah.
They're the king of the sea, except for the killer whales who eat them.
That's the irony about this, eh?
Yeah, the killer whales have discovered that the shark liver is incredibly tasty, and they'll come up to a great white shark, no matter how big it is, and just chomp its belly and rip out its liver. There's a rather huge liver, and then leave the rest of the carcass to float. The great whites aren't stupid, so once they figure what's going on, they take off.
No, I know they're stupid. They're actually, that was the one thing that's been. You're talking about most of the large mammals in the sea. They're fairly intelligent. Dolphins and whales, fairly intelligent, know how to protect themselves, and in fact, many whales have over time. Many whales have been subject to shark attacks, right?
Yes, their mammals are. In the words of Donald Trump, I'm twice as smart as a shark.
But again, the same thing is being, as you said, being attacked by killer whales, right?
Yeah, killer whales are the boss.
That is what you call nature, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So an orca, orcas come in two kinds. Ones that go after big prey, and others that go after fish. I've seen that. I saw. I was in a boat watching whales, positive killer whales, and they had corralled a bunch of salmon. And I actually saw a salmon leaping out of the water. It was very close to me too. So a salmon was leaping out of water like this. It went way high like this, and right behind it, a killer whale with its mouth open.
I've not seen that in reality, but I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah. Now he missed that one, but
well,
I imagine it didn't work.
Know?
It got the rest of them because the female of the group was like 90 years old. Like the Delta female, they're the ones that actually lead the pods in this particular type of killer whale that go after fish and rather than big game. She was about 90 years old, and the oldest male there was about 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, God, they live a long time. They're smart, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, you were fortunate to see a thing like that. Did you have a picture? Did you get a picture of it?
We probably. Well, I didn't have a camera ready at that particular time. We were probably fumbling around because you didn't have phones back then, right? So I probably was trying to get my camera.
Yeah, and actually, even with phones, it's like so. The action like that takes place, and your phone's in your pocket. By the time you get it out and turn it to the right thing, the action's over, isn't it?
Yeah, and if I'm on the boat, I'd be really reluctant to get my phone out anyway because I know it's going to go in the drink.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be with you, man. I'm not putting my phone at risk for anything.
Yelling over the side, "Don't eat that!
Don't eat my phone!" And it says, "Yeah, okay, I'll eat you instead." The great white comes up,
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I was diving in Thailand, I didn't really have any issues with any sharks or anything like that. But I remember there's two different kinds of barracuda: the smaller ones that go around in schools, and the big ones that are solitary. Right? Yeah. They go by themselves. So I'm swimming along, and I catch something out of the corner of my eye, and this big toothy fish, a barracuda, huge one, sort of swims slowly right by me, like right there. And I see these teeth sticking out of it. And I'm like, ooh, wow. Well, I hope he's not hungry.
Yeah, but you're relatively safe being up on a boat because
I wasn't on a boat that time. I was diving.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Then you are going to hope he's not hungry. Yeah. All right. Yeah. But generally speaking, on a boat, I guess it's the same as like if you're in a tour vehicle in those safari parks in Africa. They treat if you got out of the vehicle and walked away from the vehicle even 2 foot, you'd be subject to attack. Yet they come right up here next to you, and you're not subject to attack.
Well, I think if I was there and I was on the safari truck and a lion or a hyena or came pretty close to the truck, I would just switch places with the old lady beside me.
I think I'd be puking at that moment.
Here, did you see this? Oh, what a cute hyena. Let me switch places with you, madam, so you can see.
Yeah, says the old man talking about the old lady next to him. Yeah. Like, there you go. And you're supposed to protect the old ladies. All right.
Well, it depends on their bank account.
So if they're wealthy, you protect them, or until at least you're in the will.
Yeah. I'll just like, how much money you got? Lots. Okay, I will save you. And then I just grab the tour guide and throw him out to the hyena.
I know people like you. You're cynical. Dirty old man. Cynical, dirty old man,
Yes, it's a tough role to play. People think it's easy. No, it's not. It's hard. It's hard to be. It's hard to be.
And president of the Kiwanis Club, no less.
Yeah. Well, I was. I am not now. I am what's called past president. I was president for 7 years.
I was going to say
you're only supposed to hold the office for a year.
Yeah.
I was president for 7 years.
Well, you've done a lot of good work in that organization. I'm glad that they have found a new president. Hey, that's good. You know, now we can quickly retire Dave Wheeler. You know, get rid of it.
Well, yes, I've done a lot of good work in this in the community because I'm a wonderful human being.
So you got some new blood in the organization. Anyway, we better be going.
Anyway, all right. And with that facetious comment, being a wonderful human being, have a great holiday weekend, everybody. But don't just keep in the back of your mind the atrocities that are happening in Gaza right now. Kind of pray for peace. Say it every day. Hope that it comes. Anyway, have a great holiday weekend, everyone.
And we'll see you Wednesday. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.